Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Rowing Chat. This is the network for podcasts all about rowing. You can subscribe to get a weekly email with links to all of the episodes that published in the past week at rowing.chat. Now, today we have a bit of a long backstory, so I'm going to take my time doing my introductions. Ages ago, Marlene Royal and I received an email from a movie team who wanted to know if we would allow them to use the audio of one of the Faster Masters podcast episodes in their movie. And of course, we had to sign release papers and so on. And they researched and they sent us the link to the episode that they wanted. And it's quite a long episode. And we just went, yeah, fine, no problem. Signed the papers and didn't think any more of it. 3 weeks ago, we had a lovely email from a lady called Jess DiCarlo, who had been to a movie premiere and it was a preview, not a premiere. And she said, "You're not going to believe it. There's this scene where one of the actors is like in her student dorm room and you're talking. She's listening to your podcast." And we suddenly went, "Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, I kind of remember doing that back in the day." So here we are, and I am delighted to welcome to the Rowing Chat podcast to talk all about that, not to mention the backstory, Lauren Hadaway. Welcome.
Hey, glad to be here.
So, Lauren, you have made a rowing movie. This is a massive bite of a challenge to take because we don't need to name them, do we? But there are a lot of really bad scenes about rowing and a lot of really bad rowing movies. What on earth made you think you could do better?
Well, I think, for me, because I have a whole first career in post-production sound, and then I wanted to go into writing and directing, and it's cliche advice of write what you know and the story that only you can tell. And I was a collegiate rower, and I remember I was in school when The Social Network came out, and I thought that was a brilliant scene, but that's one scene of a film, and I've never seen anything to me that captured the sport. That for me was a very traumatic, a love-hate relationship of 4 years of intensity, 20 hours a week for 4 years, waking up at 5 a.m., 6 days a week, as I'm sure many rowers are familiar with. And I was totally obsessed with it. And so and I love these movies that are sort of the obsessed artist trope of someone trying to achieve or conquer something or whatever. But the thing that I've never really related to is these movies tend to have an external force. There's always someone, a coach, or they're trying to go to the Olympics, or they're trying to do and I'm a very driven, gritty person, but I'm driven by something internal. So I wanted to explore these themes of grit and ambition, and through this medium of rowing, which I felt like hadn't been captured on screen properly in the way that I related to personally. And I also like a challenge. And if anyone knows anything about making a film, they say the 3 worst things you could possibly do are shoot with animals, children, or water. And so why not have my first film be a film on the water, of course? Why make it easy? So.
And the film is called The Novice. And just to remind people, it's going to be released on the 17th of December. I have been privileged to see an advance copy. Thank you very, very much, Lauren. And let's just kick right into the sort of detail of it. This is a film which is dark. Like, there's barely anybody wearing any clothing that could be considered primary colors. It took me a long time to realize that actually that was really, really deliberate. Why did you decide to go in that particular direction?
Well, one of my early sound mentors said something to me that stuck with me, and I think it applies to literally anything in life, but especially storytelling. It's like he said 2 things. Well, one, the best directors have intention with everything they do, and he also said that whatever sound effect you're putting in, what is it adding to the story? Like, this needs to tell the story. So there's nothing in this film that's just because it's cool or it looks cool or whatever. Like, for me, the challenge becomes, this is such an internal story. Again, there's no external forces on her. This isn't a novel. I can't write out, a paragraph describing her thought process. So it became this creative challenge of putting on the screen visually and in the speaker sonically things that will help put the audience, 99 out of 100 who don't know a thing about rowing, and most of them probably who haven't experienced the level of obsession that this character does, how do you put them in the same place, and how do you make them feel what the character is feeling? And that really was the driving force behind all the creative decisions, from the costumes and the colors and things that we did, and how we shot the things, and the way the camera moves, and all of that. It was totally to evoke this kind of internal state of the character externally.
Yeah, she's like many of us, and I hope this echoes your own personal experience. You get sort of rather gently drawn into rowing, and the initial things that give you pleasure are things like the challenge of getting the sequence. And I just love, there's an early scene where they're on the ergs and they're all chanting 3 words, 3 words, 3 words. What are they chanting, Lauren?
Legs, body, arms, arms, body, legs, over and over and over. I think if people could take away one thing from this film who don't know anything about rowing, for the love of God, I hope they take away that. And when I go to the gyms and see them on the ergs, that I don't want to totally have an anxiety attack watching. So
that would be certainly, the old magic wand. If you could change one thing, that would be it. And that scene is actually the first one where I really notice you layering the sounds, because in that scene it starts with the Coach Pete, explaining to the novice group of girls how to row. Then he gets them all to chant it, and then it majors quietly into our main character, who's called Alex Dull.
Yeah, Alex.
I'm so sorry. This is a confession. I thought her surname was Dull, as in D-U-L-L, and I'm like, Dull? Or is she dull? Or is she... And I was like, no.
It's fine. Like, no one knows character names except for like the people who are really involved, because we say them a million times. An average person hears them 3 times in the movie, and that's it. So really, it's
Alex. We'll call her Alex because we can write that and we can pronounce it correctly. But it hones into her own vocalization of the little mantra. And it's a very, very clever and extremely slow process, because as a scene, it's actually quite long. And that's where I began to see your brilliance with the audio portion of the movie experience. It's not just what we're seeing, is it?
No, and it goes back to trying to put you in the head of this character. And one of the things I tried to do loosely, and I talked to Isabelle about this, I talked to the composer, Todd, the DP, everyone, was that this is very loosely a love story between Alex and the sport of rowing. And the way that everything is framed, it's you start from the initial kind of attraction, and then the kind of like the having a crush, and then the first time making love. There's a scene, the 500 frames a second, that I'm like, Isabelle, I'm going to objectify you in the scene. We're going to shoot it like a sex scene, and she's on the erg doing a 2K, which is sort of the horror and the thrill of that, which I think most people who've done a 2K can relate to. Then there's the being in love and the total bliss of it, and then the kind of slow toxic descent into this toxic relationship. And now obviously this is a very loose analogy, but that kind of dictated what I'm doing in each of these scenes, and wanted to show this character, Alex, like she essentially stumbles onto this sport, and she's sort of captivated by it. And almost that scene that you're talking about, it's almost like a meet cute, like in a rom-com, these characters would meet, and the sound of the city falls away as the music is swelling, and they see each other from across the room. Like that, for me, that's what that moment that I was trying to do, and kind of using sound to help guide that.
And I think anyone who has been involved in the sport of rowing, even as a parent, you will see and appreciate that, because you'll have observed it in the lives of people near you or yourself. And that is very much symbolic of the reason why a lot of rowers never forget their experience with the sport. There are other sports that many of us have done, but we don't get left with that same heart connection. Can you articulate why you think that is?
Look, I was growing up, I was always put into the team sports, but I was always the second to worst person on the team, the second to the last bench warmer. And I don't know, it's the coordination with other people and this changing thing. There's something about rowing that is repetitive and soothing in a way. And I think this is also another reason it hasn't been captured really on screen, because I don't think rowing is inherently cinematic. You're doing the same motion over and over and over. You're staring at the back of someone's ponytail in front of you for your 90-minute steady state or whatever. You're looking at little numbers on a screen. You're going backwards, for the love of God. You can't even like see. Lots of times races are won and lost by hundredths of a second, or you're doing a head race and you don't even have your competition next to you. Like, so the sport is not, it's not this inherently cinematic thing, but there is something kind of, with it. Oh, fuck, what was your question? I actually when I'm going on this whole tirade now of my thing.
Why do people fall in love with rowing and remember it in a way that they don't with other sports?
Yeah, I think because rowing is this physical sport. Obviously, it's incredibly demanding, but there's this mental aspect to it that I think doesn't exist in a lot of sports, because you are a team sport and you're working in unison with a group of people, but you're also mostly in your own head and you're obsessing over these things and you're doing the same movement over and over. There's no, your stroke rate goes up, this and that, whatever, but there really isn't a lot of difference. There's like something luring in it. There's a comfort, there's a rut that is like cut into your psyche and your being, and that like steadiness of it that I really can't think of another sport off the top of my head where you have that aspect of it. And so I think it's the trauma, the neuroses of that at times, like that sears into your brain. Certainly for me, that's how I would relate to it. It's just such an internal, it's almost meditative at times. Like, it's, and the amount of sunrises I think rowers have seen. I've seen more sunrises in my relatively short life than most people do in their entire lifetime. There's all these aspects of it. And to do a 2K, it's this awkward distance between not a sprint and not a marathon. The physiology on the body of that, what it does to the body, like that we are not meant to do these distances that we row, like a 2K. Like we're not built for that as human beings. And there's like a real physical pain and trauma that sears it into your memory that you just cannot shake. So I think for all of those reasons, like it's such a unique sport.
You're so right about rowing not being a naturally cinematic topic. What are the particular technical challenges that you as a filmmaker faced and that you knew you had to overcome if this was going to be authentic?
Yeah, one thing I was very clear from the beginning, there are no doubles for this. I told the producers that very early on, and none of them, were rowers. And I told Isabelle, the actress, I'm like, this is not a sport you can pick up in an afternoon. I even personally, with the background, Isabelle and Amy, the two kind of main leads, they had to learn how to row for this, and everyone else we cast from real rowers. And I had to personally interview all of the background myself, because if anyone knows anything about actors, it's like, yeah, I can ride a horse, I can play the guitar, I can do all that thing. And then once they get cast, and they try and fucking figure it out. So, but no one on the crew but me knew anything about rowing. So I had to suss them out and see, like, when they say that they've rowed, do they mean kayaking? Do they mean they were in the rowboat, like at Auntie Mame's Lake? Or do they, and I caught a lot of people who were bullshitting, quite frankly. And one still scraped through, and it was a comedic experience for everyone. But also almost a disaster. But yeah, that was a challenge. It was having to be more kind of hands-on with Isabelle's training and Amy's training, and being very involved there more than maybe you would have to be, because again, I'm the one equating all of this. I'm telling Isabelle what to do with her blisters and things like that. And even the details, like in the production design, they don't know anything about rowing, and I wrote any kind of numbers you see, any workouts you see in the film. I wrote everything myself, because it's just, I wanted to feel authentic. I wanted it to be the things that I had done. I wanted it to be right. I put a lot of care and thought into if you were to pause the screen and like look at the 2K erg times posted on the bulletin board, I really try to think out mentally, like what made sense for this team and the characters and all that, like those kind of details. But then logistically, in terms of shooting the film on the water, like I said at the beginning, water is one of the three things. I think Clint Eastwood said he'll never make a movie on the water because it's just a nightmare. And the reason is that, if you think about the first week to his director was Water Week for me. That was the first thing we shot, because it was almost winter in Canada. We shot the final race of the film over the course of 3 nights, and the city that we were shooting in was kind enough to open the dam to drain out all the water without telling us. And so what was some of the best rowing water I've ever seen, honestly, like black, glassy, smooth, every single day we shot, like heaven on earth. It became a cluster. It was disaster. The boats were getting sucked down the river. and I don't have to tell, usually, you don't have to tell rowers this, but you're going backwards. At times, some of the girls are wearing masks. So you have the 5 rowboats that are in the shot. Then you've got sorry, I say rowboats, usually scold. You got the boats in the shot, and then you got the sound boat, the safety boat, the light boat, the taxi boat, the camera boat, and the houseboat that I'm on, and I'm having walkie-talkies to talk to the girls. I'm either screaming out at them across the lake, telling them where to go, back at this and that, to they have a walkie in their where their feet are, but sometimes they get wet and they're not working anymore. Trying to coordinate all of that and having to go with the flow, because the way that scene was initially written was supposed to be that those boats were supposed to be lined up as you start a race, and we couldn't physically do it because they were just getting fucking sucked down the river, and it was bumper boats. And if any one of them would have gone in, now mind you, the other 3 girls I think that were in it, they have more experience in sculling, but Isabelle and Amy, they had only been doing it for 6 weeks. And I was like, for the love of God, please do not go in the water. Please do not go in the water, because if they would have gone in the water, the amount of time to take them to shore, to dry them off, to reset them, we would have not finished the scene. And so just had to go with the flow of like rewriting on the spot. Like, okay, this happens in rowing sometimes, like, right? Like the girls complain, like, this isn't fair. You know what? It's fucking the way it goes. The weather, this is the conditions. You got to do it. This is going to be a racing start or whatever. So just went with that and had to adjust. And then shooting too, like, there's a portion in the rain, and the amount of like logistically putting the rain machines up, like we had a very limited space, so having to be creative and reusing and moving the camera and resetting, then just being cold, like there's some rough strokes in the film that I know rowers are going to see and be like, and they're going to fucking rip it apart, and that's fine. But I want people to understand, like, these girls weren't out there for an hour. They were out there for 8 hours. There is borderline cold. It's freezing. Like, your hands are raw. You think you're tough because you're rowing, your 2 days, whatever. These girls were out there the entire day on the water. Like, the amount of, and resetting, when we do a take and they have to reset and do another take, full speed. It's exhausting, utterly exhausting, like all of that aspect of it. So yeah, those were some of the challenges. There were more. There's lightning. Had to move scenes. We had a lightning thing happen that actually cut a scene in half because we're not allowed to be on the water, obviously, and rewrote some of the scene to be inside and shot at a later date. It was a constant adjusting, and you move so slow shooting on the water, like so slow, like excruciatingly, painfully slow, because everything is just float. Like, nothing is where it's supposed to be. Everything floats, everything moves, and but it worked out, I think, for the most part.
It certainly did, Lauren, and congratulations to you, because I happened to be at Henley Royal Regatta on the day when they did the Henley Royal scene from The Social Network, and they had one take. That was it. I know it's a long course and they were able to take multiple angles, and obviously it all got edited down, but I total respect to you for doing what you did, shooting at night in single sculls with no lights on the boat, obviously, because that would have really ruined the lighting effect. But it was a very, very impressive race. And to anyone who's going to the movie, hang on for it, because you're going to absolutely love that scene. It has drama and tension, and you think it's built to the crescendo that you're expecting, and then it pauses and builds again. And there are some very, very clever devices, which I'm not going to reveal because that would be too cruel.
Yeah.
One of the, you're very sweet in pointing out that any rower, there are going to be some fluff strokes. The best one for me was Kate Drummond, who is the female head coach, Coach Edwards. And there's a lovely bit where she's in her garage rowing on her erg, and she hasn't got a clue, but you very cleverly filmed what appeared to be her final stroke, and she puts the erg handle down, and that was clever, because nobody does the final stroke.
To give her credit, she wanted to teach her, and again, like, Isabelle and Amy, they had weeks and weeks and weeks. Kate only had so much time, and so it was like sitting down with her trying to get it. And you go up at the end, and also I think Kate, as an actress, she has a physicality to her that a lot of actresses don't have. Like, she looks like she could be an athlete, so that helps as well. But yes, we skirted in right at the end of her, strokes there. So
there were a couple of absolutely classic moments where you use slow motion, particularly when the novice lets go of the handle on the erg, and we all know what's going to happen, and she is she's fantastically surprised in the way that every single novice is when they let go and they don't realize that it's going to recoil. How did you avoid smashing the screen at the Herb when you were doing that film?
I don't remember. I mean, there's this. Are you talking about the slow motion one? Or are you talking about the one where she's first learning to row? Well, the slow motion one, that was. I mean, shooting that whole thing was bizarre because we're shooting 500 frames a second, and since this audience I think is probably less geared towards specifics of cinema, like you shoot 24 frames a second generally when you're shooting film, and so we were doing 500 frames a second. So the amount of light that we had was insane. There's literally over top of Isabelle for the scene, there is a spotlight, a giant spotlight. And Todd, the DP, is manning the camera himself. And, you know, it looks very smooth and slow, but when you are watching it, when you're shooting, he's moving like fast. And the takes are literally 7 seconds long, and it's boom, and that's all you get. So it really, for him, I mean, it was just capturing, this would be more a question of how he did it, but he's just following the nature of the movement and this and that. And yeah, I don't know. Didn't think about that, but don't get the lens too close to the handle there is what I would say.
Well, it's absolutely brilliant. And there's a bit where you see the final recoil of the handle and chain, and all you see on the screen, and I watched it on a pretty big screen, is the highlighted every single link of the chain is illuminated as it waves very gently as it recoils. And trust me, it's beautiful. I feel like that could almost have been the poster for the whole movie. Not that it would have meant anything for non-rowing audiences, but it's a goodie.
I mean, it's a sexy scene. It is like the sex scene, and she's doing a 2K erg test and making a 2K erg test sexy. If I can achieve that, then you know, I've done it.
There's a lot of symbolism in the film, and you chose to pick on, reasonably obviously, a crab as a fear object that can disrupt the goals of the protagonist. And you had a few jolly large crabs that you actually physically put into situations close to the athletes. Were they very freaked out with them? Did you have to do anything special with these? Because these look big. I mean, they look like they're bigger than the palm of your hand.
Yeah, they're big crabs. I mean, what I learned about the crabs talking to her, we had to hire a crab wrangler, which is ridiculous, but it's true, and for the welfare of the animals. But what he was telling me is, like, when you get these crabs at the store, they're already basically dead. Like, they've been away from the ocean for 6 weeks, and they're very lethargic and moving slowly because they've been there for whatever. And so part of, you know, I have grappling with this thing, like, we have these crabs, but he's like, these crabs are, they're already, so they're kind of slowed down. A lot of them were you know, they're not like super active, but there were some pinchy ones that did snip Isabelle. You know, they grabbed her ankle, and then there's a scene where she's actually in a bathtub with the crab, which we have some exciting behind the scene videos of that scenario. But yeah, she was a little I mean, Isabelle was incredibly resilient and just go get it. But let me tell you, the one thing that almost made her go, oh my fucking God, was the crab. So I thought it was hilarious. She was terrified of it, but she did it.
Well, I look forward to seeing the outtakes. If there's a secret release of the behind the scenes, I will happily see them. But she does look very genuinely terrified, particularly in the scene when she's in a bath with that tap crab. And it seemed quite obvious that she was actually in the bath with the crab, although, you know, you never know when you're watching.
No, she was definitely in it, and she was naked in her pasties with that crab in the tub. So
now I want to ask a couple of things about how did you film things. So you have a couple of really great close-up shots of the coxswain, whose name is Charlotte, who is Erin the cox. And you also have a great scene in a portaloo, a porta-potty at a regatta, where Isabelle basically has a really good meltdown, but she walks away, she goes to the loo and then freaks out. How hell do you film inside a portaloo?
Well, I'll start with that, but we actually took out and by we I mean my talented grip and DP. They took out the side of the porta potty, so there's a removable side to shoot it, and we would adjust that as needed, and then also took off the top of the porta potty and had the camera rigged on top looking down. So it was kind of creative moving around and where we placed Isabelle, but totally had to cut a hole. And then with with capturing the coxswain, I mean, this is something we did too. We use the same mechanism kind of for Isabelle and the rowing and getting right in her face. This was important to me. I didn't want to do green screen type things. I wanted to be in the boat with them and the energy of it and the moving and the rocking of the boat. But I think for the specific coxswain scenes, we had Todd, the VP, who's actually manning the camera, which doesn't always happen when you make films, but he's in that seat right there. Like we had him in the 8th seat. We had the girls actually rowing kind of behind, doing that. And some of them, we would use some of the girls basically as like tripods, basically just to set the boat with their oars flat on the water, because when you have someone with this very expensive camera and it's top heavy and this and that, and we had a microphone, snapped on there too, like we needed the girls to set the boat and the rest of them were rowing. God forbid all that added weight, they muscled through it and did it. But that's kind of how we did those shots.
One of the things that I thought you wrote really well into Erin, the coxswain character, is the fact that she has perspective. And one of the difficulties when you first start rowing is it's really hard to see beyond the next really near horizon, whether that's selection for a crew, whether that's the results of the erg test. And she delivers this brilliant line about there are many more years. And I often find, as an older person who's been rowing for quite a long time, that actually this sort of perspective is something that's really hard for young people to believe, and even harder for novices, because they can look to the first varsity or the second varsity crew and I want to be in that crew. And I vividly remember this myself. I wanted to row for my university. And in my second year rowing, I remember sitting in a boat and looking at the oars and looking at the color of the oars and going, oh, I've achieved my rowing dream. And of course, your brain doesn't go, or perhaps there's another horizon that you might look at. And I felt that you really used Erin so well to help that sort of perspective and the arc of life to come into the rowing story. I don't think the message was received though, was it?
No, it isn't. And I think, and Erin, I actually based that character on a friend of mine who was a coxswain, and I still talk to her to this day. And the Timberland, the shoes, the rowing coaches who helped us, actually, they were like, Lauren, a coxswain wouldn't wear Timberlands. I'm like, this one does. Like, this one does wear them. I actually tried to get the actual ones, but she threw them away. So unfortunately, but yeah, I mean, I think Erin coming into it, she is, everyone, rowers know that the coxswain is this weird kind of position of they're almost like a coach of themselves. They're almost this mentor figure of themselves. So they have this different energy, nurturing energy about them, at least that I've found. And for Erin too, she's also coming, even though she's a freshman in this, she's coming from, in my mind, her backstory, she's done 4 years of high school rowing. So it's not like she's coming into this a total novice. This is her, she's got the experience. She's dealt with the drama, the seat race, the politics of being, on a team with people and the all of that, and is trying to tell Alex, and I think Danny too, the sort of love interest of this film, is also trying to reach Alex. And even Coach Pete, he's like saying, like, relax, you are a student athlete. You're not an athlete student, you're a student athlete. And people are they see Alex struggling, but anyone who's been in the situation themselves or dealt with someone like this, we all know you cannot change someone. They have to change themselves, and you cannot help someone who doesn't want to help themselves. So Alex does not want to hear these things. She's not there yet. And I've certainly been on both sides of this equation. And yeah, you're right. She doesn't hear it. She doesn't.
So everybody who's listening, you have to go and see this movie. I am reliably informed that it's going to be released on all of the platforms where you stream movies, which you've probably all got subscriptions to. December 17th, is that right, Lauren?
Yeah, December 17th, North America will have some theatrical. If you can see this in the theaters, please do, because again, I wanted to be in the theater, and the scope and scale, and then the sound too, which is so important for me, is different in the theatrical experience. And then same day rental as well. And then figuring out the rest of the foreign, territories, learning about that whole game right now. So, but it'll come out sometime next year for everyone else.
Well, Alex Weston, your composer, definitely deserves the massive credit that he gets, because he has done a fabulous, fabulous job. If you go to this movie expecting to hear as much as you see, and obviously appreciating Lauren's extreme skill, not only in storytelling, but in lighting. And that has made the movie really, really special for me. If you're watching, please go and take a group from your club. Maybe do it as a fundraiser. go as a team, because you will really enjoy this watching it with friends. I think for me, that's the whole point about a rowing movie, is you want to be able to turn to the person next to you and say, that happened to me.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, everything that kind of the physicality of this, what's on the screen, the things that I experienced, things I saw from teammates or talked to other rowers about, like there's like this blood blister that's infected, the collarbone breaking. I talked to an Olympian who was talking about that in her team, pissing themselves. I mean, all of this stuff, but also the beauty of it, the beautiful sunrises, and try and capture those moments as well. So hopefully rowers relate.
Lauren, you have done a wonderful job. I do hope that there is an opportunity for you to do another rowing movie, maybe in 5 years' time, because we need more of them. We know the sport is full of really good stories, and it's definitely a lack of storytellers who understand rowing that we have. Thank you so much for coming on the Rowing Chat podcast with me.
Thank you.
So to all of our listeners, please subscribe and tell your friends about The Novice. And till next